Socrates is on my Mount Rushmore of cobblestones won't forget players. I will give you that. But we are here for a different reason. Timu Hector Bellerin is going to give some opinions about the expectations of Football Manager 26 because I really don't know what to expect, but I have some thoughts and I would love to share them. I think as someone who has been playing sports games since I was a wee child, Madden, NBA 2K, FIFA, MLB The Show, Blitz the League, NFL Streets. I have a love-hate affinity for series of sports games and the way that they progress from year to year. And Football Manager has been a newer one for me. I'm new to it. Football Manager 22 was my first one. My favorite ever save was Football Manager 23 with the Philippines Build a Nation. And I've been playing this Football Manager 24 for, as long as it's been out. I don't know exactly how long now, almost 2 years, kind of crazy. But what do we expect out of Football Manager 26? Sports Interactive, and Sega as a whole, because it's kind of been pretty disappointing. Not kinda, it has been disappointing. Obviously, the delay was a big deal, with the game engine being teased just a little bit. But I'm gonna start with, what are your guys' expectations? Are you expecting a great game? Is this a stepping stone game, much like a stepping stone club in Football Manager, where FM26 is really just the beta of FM27 or FM28. I want to hear from my championship manager players as well. When the engine got introduced into the more modern Football Manager and what that was like for you guys and how you're comparing it to this one. When do you think FM26 is going to come out and how are you going to go about playing it? I know some people in my community are going to be waiting post-beta, not going to be pre-ordering it, and really waiting to see what exactly it is before taking a deep dive in. I know people worry about the game specs and also how consoleized it's going to be in regards to the dumbing down of the UI. And I say dumbing down with quotes as well. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but I'm very used to the modded skins. And finally, one of the other things they teased, or not necessarily teased, was leaked, was some of the player rules, taking out ones such as Mazzala, Segunda Volante, and replacing them with what people say are simpler terms. I have opinions about that. I don't really think it's that big of a deal. It offers more combinations with more roles, and I think there was a rumor that there might be in and out of possession instructions for players specifically too, so I think that would be a great addition to the game. I think overall, this game, not to sound too dramatic, but I like to be dramatic. My wife calls me dramatic all the time, is make or break for Sports Interactive. They've delayed it, and as they were getting ready to release it during the initial release date of last year around November, they have taken out things like international management and PvP draft mode, where they promised that it would be put in later. So I guess that's where I'll start with my first expectation. I would expect them to have international management and PvP draft mode / online saves in the game at a base level. You've had that time to do that, and I'd be really disappointed, especially with the World Cup coming up for international management. A lot of people have said this, especially Zealand, that would be a huge swing and a miss to not have international management before the World Cup in the United States, which I think is still a very underserved market for Football Manager. Obviously, I am a PC player, not a console or mobile player, and there is a huge player base on both of those things, and they deserve respect just as much as the PC people. But I think from a PC perspective, Football Manager is not the biggest game in the United States. It's obviously growing, and obviously Zealand has done a great job for growing that audience as the premier Football Manager creator and as also being an American. But outside of that, there aren't a ton of Football Manager American creators, and I'm not basing the player base off the creator pool, but it is indicative of the people that play it. If you look at Madden, if you look at NBA, if you look at FIFA, there are a lot more American creators and North American creators in relation to the amount of creators in the space. Obviously, those games are bigger. There's going to be more creators in general, but relative to the total amount, there are more Americans in that space than Football Manager. So I think it would be a huge miss not to have international management, as well as when you're adding in the women's game, which at least in the United States is huge in terms of international. That is kind of where like me and my friends really pay attention to the women's game. Having that rivalry with Japan for so long, that was kind of my peak fandom of women's international play. And This women's database is going to be really good and is going to shine a lot of light on players that, a lot of people honestly just don't know. It is not as popular as the men's game. And I honestly think it's great. It's going to allow for more diversity of save types going from men's to women's game. You can poach staff from either one, and you can have some really, really creative saves and just open up some new stories that have never been told through Football Manager. And it just shines a light on a ton of players that people really don't know, like I said before. So I'm very excited for that. But I think the biggest elephant in the room is, what is the game really going to look like in terms of players on the field? Is it going to be a worse graphical version of a FIFA, maybe like a FIFA 2000, 2001, 2002 type game? Or is it going to be something that's pretty close to what we have in FIFA with that Frostbite engine? I think that's the one they're still using. I really don't know. I haven't played FIFA in a while. But all that to say, with that teaser trailer in terms of the, cinematics of like the walking out, no one was really walking out. They're just showing the trophy for the Premier League and some of the stadium stuff and the grass moving a little bit and the crowd loading in. The Unity engine seems to be pretty impressive. So if it's anything like that, it's going to be an upgrade over what we have. But I'm curious how much that is going to really affect the player base in terms of how much they enjoy the game, because that is really just half of it. People love Football Manager for all the things that you get to do behind the scenes. It really is the ultimate sports sandbox, and I've played a ton of games like this, and I really do believe that. The amount of story that you can tell and the ways that you can kind of tell it, I think, are unrivaled in the sports video game industry, and Football Manager, I think, knows that. And like any other sports game, has failed to iterate year after year as much as I think that they should, because of the lack of competition for games like itself. FIFA, Madden, NBA 2K have always kind of just been slightly better each year. Obviously, with the growing microtransactions and games like that, that has really neutered like the single player franchise dynasty, multiple season type play style. I think a lot of that is neglected, and I think that's where you see a lot of people come into Football Manager for something fresh and something iterative in that sense. But Football Manager over the years really hasn't added the amount of features that I think a company like, Sega and Sports Interactive should be doing. This needs to be the biggest jump in the franchise, and I'm scared that it's not going to be as big of a jump as people really expect it to be. The UI, I think, is going to be pretty dumbed down, and I don't hate that. I don't hate that it's going to look like a console version just from the few screenshots that we saw a while ago. Honestly, I never used the standard FM UI anyway, so I'm really waiting for the people who do their magic with the skins like Musterman, Tato, Work the Space Gold. And I'm also curious to see how the modding community tackles FM26 as well. There'll obviously be a learning curve when the game comes out, so you're not going to have the mods as quickly as we used to, going from FM22 to 23 to 24. It only took them a few weeks, and people were figuring out how to mod it very quickly, even during the beta, which was really nice to see. But FM26 is going to present a whole new challenge. And I think that's really one thing that's kept me so interested in Football Manager 24 over these almost past 2 years is the great modding community. FM Match Lab is great. I'm about to start a save with the Dave's Realism mod. I use the skin packs that we all talk about, all the cut it out face packs on Sorted Out. I love those. The Zealand New Gen Face Manager. I'm a mod guy through and through, and I always have been in other games too. But Football Manager is one of those game series that the game improves a ton by the use of mods. But for FM26, I'm really curious to see how all of those things change. And with the new UI, is that going to disappoint people if it's pretty plain? I mean, maybe people on the FM console or FM mobile versions really don't care about that because they can't mod their game in the same way, so they're just used to a more simple UI. I think it's tough to say, because obviously when you're in the content space, you're in an echo chamber of people, a minority of people who have the loudest voices, and you just see their opinions over and over. But at the end of the day, the majority of Football Manager players don't tweet about it. They don't comment on YouTube videos. They just play by themselves and they enjoy it for what it is. And you really don't know their true opinion, which I am pretty curious about. I really wonder what the majority of the Football Manager fan base cares about. Do they care about the graphics being better? Do they care about the UI being simpler? Do they like how it is and they don't really care too much about it improving in such a drastic way? Or is this something that they've always been waiting for? In terms of me, I think improving and iterating is always something a sports game especially should be pushing towards, especially when you have this one game a year model, which To be honest, I like the way that PGA Tour 2K did it. They've been into this last one, they did it every 2 years. I don't mind waiting 2 years for every sports games if the jump in quality is actually tangible. It doesn't feel like a jump in quality is big from a year-to-year sports franchise most of the time, I'll be honest, across all sports franchises. And again, it goes back to my point of a lack of competition. Obviously, other features that have been talked about outside of, the addition of the women's game, the new Unity engine, as well as a UI refresh, is the improved licensing, especially that Premier League licensing. Yes, that is great, but that also just feels like kind of a quality of life mod just made official. I don't want to hate on that, but it's kind of like whatever. I like that, but whatever. So that's, all that to say in a very long-winded way, which I really like to do. Obviously, you can tell I stream on Twitch. I like to yap. But what I want out of Football Manager 26, my expectation is just, the FM podcast talked about it a lot in terms of we need more options for story. I'm a big role player when I play video games like this. I like to use sports games as a way to escape, to be the general manager or the coach that I'm not in real life, to tell stories that are overarching over decades and have all these connected players, coaches, teams, universes, new gens that make the game so exciting. When you've played Football Manager for a long time, things can get samey in a sense. And a lot of the times to make it different, you have to house rule it and you have to kind of do things. You really have to force making it different because it's so easy to play each save the same. All I want from Football Manager 26 is for the game to run well on this new engine, to look pretty like they seem to be hyping up a lot, for the database to expand because that only adds to the reach and potential for storytelling. But in terms of new features, we need more variety of press conferences, of events happening. I want random stuff to happen. I want my player to go on a 3-day club bender, not show up to practice, and then me as a coach, I have to decide what has to happen. Obviously, that happens every so often. Like I can count on one hand how many times it's happened in FM22, 23, and 24 me playing, and it's probably like 4-ish. I might be being a little hyperbolic. Maybe it was 5. I don't know. But push the story, variety of storytelling. What is sports without story? If it was just box scores all the time, dude, that'd be so boring. The drama of sports is the personalities, the clashing of heads. This guy didn't go here. I'm reeling after Eze chose Arsenal over Spurs. After Morgan Gibbs White release clause was canceled thanks to that owner of Nottingham Forest. I want to see that in Football Manager, even though it would give me soccer PTSD for that to happen. And please don't click off just because I said soccer, but I want more stuff like that in Football Manager so badly. I love Paradox games like Stellaris, Crusader Kings 3. I haven't played Heart of Iron or anything like that. I watched enough World War I and World War II movies growing up. I think I'm kind of tired of that era. So I'm going back. I'm going back and I'm going in the future. Crusader Kings and Stellaris. But I want those type of crazy things to happen. What do you remember most in a Football Manager save? You remember the Wonder Kid that you grew from, not a child, I mean like 15. From 15 all the way to 32, 33. I know some of you guys are selling Wonder Kid to 26 because that's old. I'm 29. I take that very personally, but that's what you remember, growing Wonder Kids. You remember your first Champions League win. You remember what stadium it was in. You remember the players that scored it. I remember mine, Fiorentina, Turkish superstar Wonder Kid scoring a brace in Turkey against Man United, coached by Wayne Rooney. I need stories like that. Wayne Rooney ain't ever going to coach a Champions League team. Only in my universe. That is what we need more of. Randomness, craziness, story immersion. Those are the things that I love about Football Manager. I really think Football Manager has a monopoly on sports storytelling and the world that it creates because of how open of a sandbox it is. You guys need to open your minds and really think about how you can play a save creatively. Someone in my Discord, not me, said when I make my videos, Dylan is really trying to convince people to play the game worse. And maybe I am. I put restrictions on my save. I make fun rules. Nothing ever like really wonky, like I can only sign a player who is 5'6", 145 and has 12 work rate. That's going to be my entire team. No, it's take a sense of what the team is, try and recruit for that, play it realistically. Realistically is so quote unquote because you see in real life, Granit Xhaka going to Sunderland, everyone said, that's a football manager signing. That's a football manager signing. There's a culture about this, and that is what it's so cool. Oh my God, I am so off topic about the expectations of Football Manager 26. I got excited about, being excited for FM26. So yeah, that's really what I want. Story features. You play games like this because you can tell a different story each time. Why do people like GTA RP? Because you can tell different stories. Why do people play Red Dead Redemption 2 over and over and over? Because you can go about the story in so many different ways. Why do people like role-playing games like that? Why do people like playing World of Warcraft for thousands upon thousands of hours using different characters? Because you can tell a different story with each of those characters. And that's what Football Manager is and always should be. Each save is a different story that you can tell, and they just need to keep pushing that. I really hope the engine and the UI doesn't cloud people about the fact that what we expect is a good product under the hood that doesn't feel repetitive. There is nothing worse than a game that feels repetitive. And the reason people play repetitive games is because of, things like in Call of Duty or Valorant, you're chasing a rank, you're chasing cosmetic things. But at the end of the day, those games are so repetitive. They get you. It's that casino gambling type, not philosophy, but that thing, they trick your brain. They trick your brain into thinking you really want to play that game. You should play the game to want to play the game, not to attain something within the game. That's what makes a good game. So please, Sports Interactive, if you are watching this, make your game less repetitive. I'm not saying it's repetitive, but it's easy to play this game repetitively. I think that's how you say it. But I expect you guys to push the envelope in storytelling. I said it already. What is so great about world football? The stories. Why do people like watching thousands upon thousands of hours of football, real life content on YouTube about this player that you never know? Why were people so enthralled by the Gift Orban story like 2 or 3 years ago? Because of the story, because of how crazy that is, how cool things like that are. How cool was it when Iceland made that World Cup run? Was it World Cup or Euros? My ball knowledge sucks. I'm an American. I'm sorry. But I will put it on the screen. That is the type of thinking that we want to see. Oh, I got another one. What about Shabalala at the African World Cup hitting that dance? I hope I did Shabalala justice there. But yeah, I really just want more story in Football Manager 26. I went into this video not with like a big script. I just had thoughts about the game. And really what it comes down to is the whole ethos of this channel. Story-based Football Manager. FM26 needs to push the story forward. What I'm worried about is stagnation in sports games. That is always what kills them. Other than microtransactions, if Football Manager ever gets an ultimate team, I don't even know what I would think, to be honest. Yeah, that's a dark road. We're not gonna think about that. But we need story. We need more story elements in the game. We need a Unity engine that's gonna run well, and we need more transparency from Sports Interactive. Things that, they said they were gonna do. I, again, want to hear from you guys. Are expectations high, or are you keeping them really low so that when it breaks it, it feels like a win, but it's really not that great? I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts about Football Manager 26 as of now with all the news? If you're looking for really good news about what's going on with Football Manager 26, I'll point you towards FM Console and probably Zealand is the two best resources for things like that. But yeah, let me know, guys. I really, really am curious what your expectations for FM26 are. I would love to hear what your plans for a save are. Who's going to be playing women's football? Who is going to be taking advantage of that sweet Premier League licensing? Oh my God. All right, now I'm just being a dick. But all that to say, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this rant. It's another Dill classic rant. But other than that, guys, I will see you in the next one. And if you ever want to catch me live, twitch.tv/Dill40K. I love to yap. That's why I stream. And I love Football Manager, so I'm really hoping for a great, great product whenever it does come out. Peace.